Whenever I was asked at the end of each stretch of house arrest how it felt to be free, I would answer that I felt no different because my mind had always been free. I have spoken out often of the inner freedom that comes out from following a course in harmony with one's conscience. Isaiah Berlin warned against the dangers of the internalization of freedom. He said, "Spiritual freedom, like moral victory, must be distinguished from a more fundamental sense of freedom and a more ordinary sense of victory. Otherwise, there will be a danger of confusion in theory and justification of oppression in practice in the name of liberty itself." There is certainly a danger that the acceptance of spiritual freedom as a satisfactory substitute for all other freedoms could lead to passivity and resignation. But an inner sense of freedom can reinforce a practical drive for the more fundamental freedoms in the form of human rights and rule of law. Buddhism teaches that the ultimate liberation is liberation from all desire. It could be argued, therefore, that the teachings of the Buddha are inimical to movements that are based on the desire for freedom in the form of human rights and political reform. However, when the Buddhist monks of Burma went on a metta, that is loving kindness, march in 2007, they were protesting against the sudden steep rise in the price of fuel that had led to a devastating rise in food prices. They were using the spiritual authority to move for the basic right of the people to affordable food. The belief in spiritual freedom does not have to mean an indifference to the practical need for the basic rights and freedoms that are generally seen as necessary, that human beings may live like human beings. A basic human right, which I value highly, is freedom from fear. Since the very beginning of the democracy movement in Burma, we have had to contend with the debilitating sense of fear that permeates our whole society. Visitors to Burma are quick to remark that the Burmese are warm and hospitable. They also add, sadly, that the Burmese are in general afraid to discuss political issues. Fear is the first adversary we have to get past when we set out to battle for freedom, and often it is the one that remains until the very end. But freedom from fear does not have to be complete. It only has to be sufficient to enable us to carry on. And to carry on in spite of fear requires tremendous courage. No, I am not afraid. After a year of breathing these prison nights, I will escape into the sadness, to name which is escape. It isn't true. I am afraid, my darling, but make it look as though you haven't noticed. The gallantry embodied in Ratushinskaya's lines is everyday fare for dissidents. They pretend to be unafraid as they go about their duties and pretend not to see that their comrades are also pretending. This is not hypocrisy. This is courage that has to be renewed consciously from day to day and moment to moment. This is how the battle for freedom has to be fought, until such time as we have the right to be free from the fear imposed by brutality and injustice. Akhmatova and Ratushinskaya were Russians. Henley was English. But the struggle to survive under oppression and the passion to be the master of one's own fate and the captain of one's own soul is common to all races. The universal human aspiration to be free has been brought home to us by the stirring developments in the Middle East. The Burmese are as excited by these events as peoples elsewhere. Our interest is particularly keen because there are notable similarities between the December 2010 revolution in Tunisia and our own 1988 uprising. Both started with what at that time seemed small, unimportant events. A fruit seller in a Tunisian town, unknown to the world at large, gave an unforgettable demonstration of the importance of basic human rights. One humble man showed the world that his right to human dignity was more precious to him than life itself. This sparked off a whole revolution. In Burma, a quarrel in a Rangoon tea shop between university students and local men was handled by the police in a way the students considered unjust. This led to demonstrations that resulted in the death of a student, Pomo. This was a spark that fired the nationwide demonstrations against the dictatorship of the Burmese Socialist Program Party. A friend once said she thought the straw that broke the camel's back became intolerable because the animal had caught a glimpse of itself in a mirror. The realization dawned that the burden it was bearing was of unacceptable magnitude, and its collapse was in fact a refusal to continue bearing so oppressive a load. In Tunis and in Burma, the deaths of 2 young men were the mirrors that made the people see how unbearable were the burdens of injustice and oppression they had to endure. It is natural that the young should yearn for freedom. The desire to stretch newly matured wings is as strong as it is instinctive. It comes as no surprise to us in Burma that young people are the vanguard of the Tunisian revolution. It also comes as no surprise that a popular rapper was prominent among those who demanded that they be allowed to decide the shape of their own existence. In Burma today, young rappers are at the core of Generation Wave, an informal organization strongly committed to democracy and human rights. A number of them were imprisoned after the Saffron Revolution of the monks. About 15 of them still remain in jail today. The Burmese authorities, like the now ousted Tunisian government, are not fond of intense, unconventional young people. They see them as a threat to the kind of order they wish to impose on our country. For those who believe in freedom, young rappers represent a future unbound by prejudice, by arbitrary rules and regulations, by oppression and injustice. The similarities between Tunisia and Burma are the similarities that bind people all over the world who long for freedom. There are dissimilarities too, and it is because of these dissimilarities that the outcome of the 2 revolutions have been so different. The first dissimilarity is that while the Tunisian army did not fire on their people, the Burmese army did. The second, and in the long run, probably the more important one, is that the Tunisian revolution enjoyed the benefits of the communications revolution. This not only enabled them to better organize and coordinate their movements, it kept the attention of the whole world firmly focused on them. Not just every single death, but even every single wounded can be made known to the world within minutes. In Libya, in Syria, and in Yemen now, the revolutionaries keep the world informed of the atrocities of those in power. The picture of a 13-year-old boy tortured to death in Syria aroused such anger and indignation that world leaders had to raise their voices in condemnation. Communications means contact, and in the context of the Middle Eastern revolutions, it was a freedom contact. Do we envy the people of Tunisia and Egypt? Yes, we do envy them, their quick and peaceful transitions. But more than envy is a sense of solidarity and of renewed commitment to our cause, which is the cause of all women and men who value human dignity and freedom. In our quest for freedom, we learn to be free. We have to act out our belief in freedom. This is Václav Havel's living in truth. We go about our duties out of our own free will, in spite of the dangers that are inherent in trying to live like free people in an unfree nation. We exercise our freedom of choice by choosing to do what we consider to be right, even if that choice leads to the curtailment of other freedoms, because we believe that freedom engenders more freedoms. Those old women and those young people who come to their unpaid jobs at NLD headquarters are exercising their right to choose the hard road of freedom. As I speak to you, I'm exercising my right to the freedom of communications, and the very fact that I'm exercising this right makes me feel a much freer person. Dissent is a vocation in accordance with Max Weber's views on politics as a vocation. We engage in dissent for the sake of liberty, and we are prepared to try again and again with passion, with a sense of responsibility and a sense of proportion to achieve what may seem impossible to some. We are struggling with open eyes to turn our dream of freedom into reality. I would like to end this lecture with my favorite lines from Kipling, with many thanks to Tim Garton Ash, who tracked them down for me. I'd not give room for an emperor, I'd hold my road for a king. To the triple crown I'd not bow down, but this is a different thing. I'll not fight with the powers of air. Sentry, pass him through. Drawbridge let fall. He's the Lord of us all, the dreamer whose dream came true.